Yo, what's going on, guys? Today I'm doing a little bit of a different piece of content, which is going to be a reflection on some of the struggles that I've faced this over this last 365 days, specifically in regards to optimizing myself to be able to output better for the businesses that I'm working on. I personally have struggled a lot over the years with procrastinating and pushing things off until the very last second to get them done. I've struggled also a lot with just getting distracted easily, where I'm going to try to do multiple things at the same time and then things are left like partially undone. And this is in all regards, for business, for personal life. One thing that I've come to understand is that our personal lives and how we optimize ourselves to be able to output will and do directly have an impact in the projects that we're building and where we're focusing our energy on. And the most valuable asset that we all have is our time. So how we actually choose to spend that time and how we focus on the tasks at hand during those times and those time blocks is extremely important, and something that I've been trying to get better at myself, and that I wanted to just share some tips and tricks and things that I've kind of learned that have helped with that. So the first kind of aspect of this is I want to ask you guys a question. I want you guys to think about it. So think of somebody who you would deem 10 times smarter than you in like the most ideal situation. You know, this might be for some people, an operator that exited multiple businesses, you know, whoever it may be, owner of whatever business, right? Like pick that person. I have a few advisors and people that I look up to that, you know, I put in that situation, that I kind of picture the situation that I'm gonna give you in. And I want you to think about what do they do? Like, what do they do in a daily basis? How do they spend their time, and how do they organize their lives in order to be able to be in a position where they're achieving what they're achieving? In order to become a person, you have to do the action items that that person in that scenario does on a daily basis for it to be able to compound. That's a big understanding and learning that I've come to. And a really good analogy that one of my advisors gave me is to think of it like boot camp, right? So to become a soldier, you have to go to boot camp. Well, what do you do at boot camp? Well, you wake up super early. They put you through, you know, tough training. You have to do the things that soldiers do in order to become a soldier. Another example is like think of an athlete, like a high performing athlete. For that athlete to get to be, you know, playing in whatever high end sports championship you want, right? They have to do those things consistently, and they have to build habits around that. And that's something that is difficult, right? It's difficult for us to break bad habits and to form good habits that are required for that, because oftentimes they're uncomfortable. And that's a whole nother rabbit hole that we can dive into. But I found that by positioning myself in discomfort daily, really helps with everything else that is required to happen, to be easier. A few other, I'm just going to kind of keep chucking some learnings that I've had here. So one thing I found beneficial here is identifying the weaknesses that we have as operators, right? So for me, one of them is being lazy, getting distracted easily is another one. Identifying these and then building like a defense deck against those. And what I mean by that is like a reward system. And I'll give you guys what I do for mine. So one of the challenges that I have is getting distracted easily, okay? And what I've found to be really beneficial is by rewarding myself if I focus on a task for a given period of time as like a deep work block. So if I'm able to literally sit down, knock out 2 hours of deep work for a specific task, and I'll kind of lay out a little bit more how I come up with the ones that I work on here in a bit. But I found that if I sit down, knock out that task, and at the end of that say, all right, well, after the deep work block is done, I'm going to do, I call them earned dopamine activities. So after I do something that I normally have a weakness on, I reward myself by doing an activity where I earn my dopamine in, okay? And that's really beneficial. I found it beneficial for a few reasons. One of them is I'm then able to also build up my skill sets in other things that I'm passionate about. So for example, one of my earned dopamine activities is playing guitar. I'm trying to get better at playing guitar. So by injecting that as like a reward for being able to focus on something and not get distracted on it, I'm able to have a break after my deep work and be able to work on an activity that's actually going to benefit me. And there's so many other ones. Like another one is going to the gym. You know, another one could be going and doing a sport that you like. I got into pickleball recently. So identifying what are different activities that you can do that you will earn dopamine by doing and that will actually benefit you has been a huge unlock for me this year, to where I've been aiming and trying to inject those every single day to break apart these deep work blocks of focus, which are extremely required and necessary in order for us to actually get the tasks done that need to be done to move our projects forward. Few other things I'm just going to kind of chuck out there. All the projects, right, that we're trying to work on, the way that I like to approach them is by going backwards. So it's like, what's the end goal? Well, for a lot of you guys, end goal is going to be, well, I want to have my brand, my Shopify store generate $1 million this year. I want to keep 10-20% of that, right? Cool. Write that down, like write that goal down every single day. And then on a whiteboard or wherever, start breaking down what is required. What are the things that need to happen in order for you to hit that goal? So in order to hit $1 million on your store at X% margin, how many units do you need to sell? Okay, cool. At what AOV do you need to sell those units, right? So start breaking down what are literally the numbers and KPIs that you're going to need to hit in order to make that happen. You can continue breaking that into so many parts. Specifically for ecom, you would be asking yourself, okay, well, how much content do I need to produce? Well, what's the win rate for that content? And then based off of the hit rate and win rate for the content that you're testing and producing, you can identify, well, how many pieces of content do you need to create in order to start getting more consistent and to start pushing more spend? And, you can identify and go directly backwards to be able to kind of make a checklist of what are the action items that need to be done in order to hit said goal. And what I like to do then is, after I identify kind of that checklist, I like to directly have that accessible somewhere. Now, you can use the Reminders app on your Mac. You can use like a Notes app with the checklist. You can use Notion. You can use Asana. You can write this down anywhere you want, wherever you actually prefer, and will most likely check it. And then what I've found also really beneficial, which is something I recently started implementing, that was advised to me by another advisor I have, is getting these items and the day before. So not the day of, but in the evening, right before the next day, sitting down and saying, okay, what are, taking the next top 3 ones, right, that are going to be required in order to get to the next level and to compound for you to eventually get to that goal. Taking those next 3 action items or next few action items, I typically like to do 2 to 3 a day. I don't like to do more than that, as I find that it's unrealistic. and literally take one of those action items and set that aside for a deep work block. And literally in your Google Calendar, assign a deep work block where you're just going to be focusing on that one item. And do that for the second one, do that for a third one, right? And then split those up with doing things you actually enjoy. Those have been things that have been extremely beneficial for me this year, and I'm still not perfect at them. I'm still learning a lot, but I wanted to package it up and just pass it along in case this is beneficial for any of you guys there. Take it easy. Have a good rest of your Tuesday. Cheers.